The small town of Riverbrook wasn't known for much. It had a single high school, a few family-owned shops, and an old stone bridge that cut 15 minutes off the walk home. For most students at Riverbrook High, that bridge was just a shortcut. For Amara Johnson, it was a place to avoid at all costs. Amara was the kind of student teachers bragged about during lunch breaks. At 17, she already had colleges sending her brochures with handwritten notes. Her chemistry teacher once joked that Amara could probably teach the class better than he could. She never mentioned how many hours she spent studying after her parents went to bed. The lamp on her desk, the only light in the house as she worked through practice problems again and again. "You have to be twice as good," her father often said, in his soft accent that still carried hints of Ghana, the country he'd left 20 years ago. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Amara knew the rest by heart. The Johnson family lived in a small blue house on the east side of town. It wasn't much, but her parents had saved for years to buy it, working jobs that made their hands rough and their backs sore. Her mother cleaned houses during the day and offices at night. Her father drove a delivery truck and picked up weekend shifts at the warehouse. They rarely complained, but Amara noticed how they winced when they stood up too quickly or how they fell asleep, minutes after sitting down on the couch. Every morning, Amara woke her younger siblings, Kofi and Essie, made them breakfast, and walked them to the elementary school before heading to her own classes. Every afternoon, she picked them up and helped with homework while starting dinner. Her parents called her their little miracle, but there was nothing little about the responsibility she carried. "You're doing it again," her friend Tasha said one day at lunch, waving a hand in front of Amara's face. "Earth to Amara, you're staring at your calculus book like it insulted your grandmother." Amara blinked and looked up. "Sorry, just thinking about the test on Friday." Tasha rolled her eyes. "You could take that test in your sleep and still get the highest grade in class. What's really bothering you?" Amara hesitated, then closed her book. "I need to pick up an extra shift at the library this week, but Mrs. Chen already scheduled me for Thursday and Friday." "So take the bridge home today," Tasha said, popping a fry into her mouth. "It'll save you time, the bridge." Just the thought of it made Amara's stomach tighten. "I can't. Because of Vanessa?" Tasha lowered her voice. "She's just a sad, angry girl who makes herself feel better by making others feel worse." That was putting it mildly. Vanessa Sutton had made Riverbrook High her personal kingdom, and the bridge was her favorite throne. For the past year, she'd been targeting students of color, especially those who, like Amara, kept to themselves and focused on their studies. The bridge, with its lack of supervision and limited escape routes, was the perfect spot for her particular brand of cruelty. "Remember what she did to Dion last month?" Amara whispered. Tasha nodded grimly. Dion had transferred schools after Vanessa and her friends cornered him on the bridge, tore up his art portfolio, and recorded the whole thing. The video never made it online. Principal Rivera had made sure of that, but the damage was done. Dion, whose paintings had won regional awards, hadn't picked up a brush since. "I know," Tasha sighed, "but you can't keep taking the long way home. That's an extra 40 minutes you don't have." She was right, and Amara knew it. Between her classes, her job at the library, and helping at home, every minute mattered. And today she needed to stop by the pharmacy for her mother's prescription before it closed. "Maybe just this once," Amara said, more to herself than to Tasha. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes and quiet hallways. Amara checked her watch as the final bell rang. If she took the long way, she'd miss the pharmacy's closing time. If she took the bridge, just this once, she repeated, shouldering her backpack. It was heavier than usual, filled with library books she'd checked out for her history project. The path to the bridge was surprisingly empty. Most students had already left, eager to start their afternoon freedom. Amara walked quickly, her shoes crunching on the gravel path that led through a small wooded area, and then to the stone bridge that spanned Willow Creek. The bridge itself was beautiful. In an ancient, forgotten way, built nearly a century ago, its stone walls were covered with moss and ivy. On sunny days, the water below sparkled like diamonds. Today, under a cloudy sky, it looked gray and uninviting. Amara was halfway across when she heard them. Laughter, sharp and mean, coming from the other end of the bridge. Her steps faltered as Vanessa and 3 of her friends emerged from the trees. "Well, well," Vanessa said, her voice carrying across the distance between them. "Look who decided to use our bridge today." Amara glanced behind her, considering retreat, but she'd come too far. The pharmacy would close in 20 minutes. Her mother needed that medicine tonight. I'm just passing through, Amara said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm in a hurry. Oh, she's in a hurry, Vanessa mocked, nudging the girl beside her. Hear that, Lily? The genius is too busy for us regular folks. They spread out across the width of the bridge, blocking the path ahead. Amara clutched the strap of her backpack tighter, her knuckles turning white. Please, she said. I need to get my mom's medicine. Oh, that's sweet, Vanessa said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. But first, let's have a little chat about bridge tolls. Amara had heard about this. Vanessa's toll could be money, homework answers, or sometimes just the pleasure of making someone beg to pass. Dayon had refused to pay any kind of toll. That's when things had gotten ugly. I don't have any money with me, Amara said truthfully. That's not a problem, Vanessa replied, stepping closer. I'm sure a smart girl like you can find other ways to pay. The other girls giggled, and Amara felt a flush of anger rise to her cheeks. She'd spent her whole life being careful, following rules, working twice as hard as everyone else. And for what? To be trapped on a bridge by someone who had probably never stayed up all night studying, or worried about how to stretch groceries to the end of the month. Something shifted inside her. A quiet voice that had always told her to keep her head down, to avoid trouble, suddenly fell silent. In its place rose a new feeling. Not exactly courage, but something close to it. A certainty that whatever happened next, she wouldn't make it easy for them. Actually, Amara said, her voice stronger now, I think I'll pass today. No toll. Vanessa's smirk faded, replaced by genuine surprise. This wasn't how these encounters usually went. The target was supposed to be scared, not defiant. Excuse me? Vanessa said, taking another step forward. You heard me, Amara replied. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, making sure they all saw it. I'm recording this, by the way. Has been since I stepped onto the bridge. This was a lie, she hadn't been recording. But as she spoke, she tapped the screen and the red record button appeared. Now she was. What do you think you're doing? Vanessa demanded, her confidence slipping just a fraction. Documenting, Amara said simply, for a project I'm working on. About conflict resolution in high schools. My counselor thinks it might help me get that scholarship I'm applying for. This part was true. For months, Amara had been quietly collecting stories from students who had encountered bullying. She'd interviewed teachers and researched different approaches schools around the country were taking. The project had started as a way to make sense of her own experiences, but it had grown into something more. Turn that off, Vanessa snapped, but she didn't move closer. I'd rather not, Amara said, unless you want to let me pass. I really do need to get to the pharmacy before it closes. Vanessa looked uncertain for the first time since Amara had known her. The other girls were watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The moment stretched out, tense and fragile. Then from behind Vanessa, a new voice broke the silence. What's going on here? Mr. Reynolds, the track coach, was standing at the end of the bridge. He must have been out for his daily run. He was wearing shorts and a Riverbrook High t-shirt, slightly out of breath. Nothing, Vanessa said quickly, stepping aside. We were just talking. Mr. Reynolds said, clearly not believing her. Well, how about you all do your talking somewhere else? The bridge isn't a hangout spot. The girls shuffled past him, Vanessa throwing one last glare at Amara over her shoulder. Mr. Reynolds waited until they were out of sight before approaching. You okay, Amara? He asked. She nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly as she put her phone away. Yes, sir. Thank you. Want me to walk with you the rest of the way? He offered. No, that's okay, she said. I can manage. As she continued across the bridge, Amara felt something she hadn't expected. Not relief that Mr. Reynolds had shown up, but disappointment. For a moment there, she'd stood her ground. She'd found a voice she didn't know she had, and strangely enough, she wanted to know what would have happened if she'd been allowed to use it. The next morning, Amara woke before her alarm. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying yesterday's encounter on the bridge. Something had changed inside her. For years, she'd followed her parents' advice. Keep your head down, work hard, don't make waves. It was how immigrants survived, her father said. But yesterday, for a few brief moments before Mr. Reynolds appeared, she'd done the opposite. And it had felt right. She checked her phone and found 3 texts from Tasha. You okay? Heard about what happened on the bridge, call me. News traveled fast in Riverbrook High. Amara sighed and put her phone away. She'd deal with Tasha later. Right now, she needed to get Kofi and Essie ready for school. Downstairs, she found her mother already in the kitchen, stirring a pot of oatmeal. The new medicine must have helped. There was color in her cheeks today. "Morning, Mama," Amara said, kissing her mother's cheek. "Good morning, my star," her mother replied. "You were out late yesterday. Had to go to the pharmacy." Amara didn't mention the bridge. Her parents had enough to worry about. "You work too hard," her mother said, ladling oatmeal into bowls. "You should be enjoying your youth, not running errands for your old mother." "You're not old," Amara laughed. "And I don't mind," it was true. She didn't mind the responsibilities, the extra work, the constant juggling of school and home. What she minded was the Vanessas of the world, who seemed to float through life thinking they owned it. At school, Amara felt eyes on her as she walked to her locker. Whispers followed her down the hallway. She kept her back straight and her eyes forward the way her mother had taught her. Tasha was waiting by Amara's locker, practically bouncing with excitement. "Why didn't you call me?" she demanded. "I had to hear about the bridge thing from Zach, who heard it from Priya, who heard it from someone on the track team." "It wasn't a big deal," Amara said, spinning her combination lock. "Mr. Reynolds showed up before anything really happened." "Not a big deal?" Tasha's eyes widened. "Amara, nobody stands up to Vanessa. Nobody. And you not only stood up to her, you recorded it." "The whole school's talking about it," Amara froze. "The whole school?" "Well, maybe not the whole school," Tasha admitted. "But definitely our grade. And probably the juniors too." Great. Exactly what she didn't need, attention. Amara grabbed her calculus textbook and shut her locker with more force than necessary. "Look, I just want to forget about it, okay? I have a test to study for." Tasha looked disappointed but nodded. "Fine, but just so you know, I think what you did was brave." Brave wasn't the word Amara would have chosen. Foolish, maybe. Reckless, definitely. But brave? That implied she had a choice. And yesterday, standing on that bridge with her mother's medicine waiting, she hadn't felt like she had one. The morning classes passed without incident. Amara kept her head down, took notes, answered questions when called on. Normal. Safe. But as she walked to the cafeteria for lunch, a strange feeling settled over her. The hallways seemed quieter than usual, the other students giving her slightly more space than they typically did. She spotted Vanessa near the cafeteria entrance, surrounded by her usual group. Normally, Amara would have walked the long way around, avoiding any chance of eye contact. Today, though, she hesitated. Why should she be the one to change her path? Taking a deep breath, she walked straight ahead. As she passed Vanessa's group, their conversation died. Amara felt Vanessa's eyes burning into her back but kept walking, one foot in front of the other, just like crossing the bridge. Inside the cafeteria, she found Tasha already at their usual table. "You won't believe what I just heard," Tasha said as soon as Amara sat down. "Principal Rivera called Vanessa into his office this morning. Someone showed him a video of her bullying a freshman last week." Amara nearly choked on her water. "What, who showed him?" Tasha shrugged. "No one knows. But people are saying it might have something to do with your project. You know, the one about bullying that you mentioned to Vanessa yesterday?" "But I didn't," Amara began, then stopped herself. She hadn't shown any videos to Principal Rivera, but she had been collecting stories, documenting patterns. And yes, she had recordings, though she'd promised the students who shared their experiences that she wouldn't show them to anyone without permission. "I didn't show him anything," she said firmly. "Well, someone did," Tasha replied. "And now there's a rumor going around that you've been secretly recording bullying incidents all year, as part of some big exposé." "That's not true," Amara protested. "My project is about conflict resolution strategies, not exposing anyone." But even as she said it, she realized how it must look. She had pulled out her phone on the bridge. She had mentioned her project. And now Vanessa was in trouble. "Maybe I should talk to her," Amara said, glancing toward the cafeteria entrance. "Explain that this wasn't me." Tasha stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "Are you crazy? Vanessa probably wants to kill you right now. The last thing you should do is approach her." She was right, of course. Talking to Vanessa would only make things worse. But the thought of being feared, of other students thinking she was some kind of vigilante, made Amara deeply uncomfortable. That wasn't who she was. The rest of the day passed in an anxious blur. In her last class, AP Literature, Amara could barely focus on the discussion of their eyes were watching God. Her own eyes kept drifting to the clock, counting down the minutes until she could escape. When the final bell rang, she rushed to her locker, hoping to get out before most students. But as she turned the corner, she saw them, Vanessa and two of her friends, waiting. There was nowhere to go. The hallway was crowded with students, and turning back would only delay the inevitable. Taking a deep breath, Amara continued forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "There she is," one of Vanessa's friends said as Amara approached. "The spy." Vanessa stepped forward, blocking Amara's path to her locker. Her face was flushed with anger, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You happy now?" she demanded. "I got 3 days of detention because of you." "I didn't show any video to Principal Rivera," Amara said quietly, aware of the students slowing down around them, watching. "I swear, liar," Vanessa spat. "You threatened to record me on the bridge. You talked about your little project. And now magically Rivera has a video of me. Do you think I'm stupid?" "No," Amara said. "I don't think you're stupid. I think you're angry. And I think you're taking it out on the wrong person." The hallway had grown quiet. Even Vanessa's friends looked uncomfortable now. "You don't know anything about me," Vanessa said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I know more than you think," Amara replied. It wasn't a bluff. Part of her research had involved understanding why bullies behaved the way they did. And in a town as small as Riverbrook, certain stories were hard to keep secret. Like how Vanessa's mother had left 3 years ago, or how her father had lost his job at the factory and started drinking, or how Vanessa, who used to be on the honor roll, had started skipping classes and picking fights around the same time. Vanessa stared at her for a long moment, then shook her head. "You think having a few facts means you understand? You don't know what it's like. You with your perfect family and your perfect grades and your perfect future all planned out." The unfairness of it hit Amara like a physical blow. Perfect family? Her parents worked themselves to exhaustion every day. Perfect grades? Only because she stayed up studying while Vanessa was out with friends. Perfect future? Nothing in her life was guaranteed, not college, not scholarships, nothing. "You're right," Amara said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I don't know what it's like to be you, but you don't know what it's like to be me either, so maybe we're both making assumptions we shouldn't." For a second, something flickered in Vanessa's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or surprise, but then her face hardened again. "Stay away from me," she said. "And if I see that phone out around me again, I'll make sure it ends up at the bottom of Willow Creek." With that, she pushed past Amara, her friends following close behind. The hallway erupted in whispers as they disappeared around the corner. Amara leaned against the lockers, suddenly exhausted. That hadn't gone at all how she'd planned. She'd wanted to clear things up, to make Vanessa understand she wasn't the enemy. Instead, she'd only made things worse. "That was intense," a voice said beside her. Amara turned to see Dion, the boy who had transferred schools after his encounter with Vanessa on the bridge. Except he was here, standing next to her in the hallway of Riverbrook High. "Dion, I thought you transferred," he shrugged. "I did for a few weeks. Then I realized I was letting her win." He glanced in the direction Vanessa had gone. "Looks like someone finally stood up to her." "I didn't mean to," Amara admitted. "It just happened." "Sometimes that's how change starts," Dion said. "Not with some big plan, but with someone reaching their limit." He smiled at her, a genuine smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "For what it's worth, I think what you did took guts." Before Amara could respond, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from the library, Mrs. Chen asking if she could come in early for her shift. Amara looked at the time and grimaced. If she went straight there, she'd be taking the long way around again. But after today's confrontation, the bridge seemed like an even worse option than before. "I have to go," she told Dion. "Library shift. The bridge way or the long way?" he asked, as if reading her mind. Amara hesitated. "The long way, I think." "Smart," he nodded. "But you know she'll be waiting for you tomorrow. And the day after that?" "I know," Amara sighed. "I just don't know what to do about it." Dion studied her for a moment, then reached into his backpack and pulled out a small sketchbook. He flipped to an empty page, scribbled something, then tore it out and handed it to her. "My number," he explained. "In case you want to talk about that project of yours. I might have some insights to share." Amara took the paper, surprised. "You'd want to be part of it?" Even after what happened to your artwork? Daeon's expression turned serious, especially after that. Some stories need to be told, you know? As she walked to the library, taking the long way around Willow Creek, Amara thought about what Dion had said. Some stories needed to be told. Her project had started as a simple exploration of conflict resolution techniques, but maybe it could be something more. Maybe it could be a platform for voices that had been silenced, including her own. She pulled out her phone and looked at the recording from yesterday's bridge encounter. She hadn't watched it yet, hadn't even been sure why she kept it. But now, as she hit play and saw Vanessa's face fill the screen, not angry but scared, vulnerable for just a split second, Amara understood. This wasn't about exposing bullies. It was about understanding why they became bullies in the first place, and maybe, just maybe, finding a way to break the cycle. 3 days passed. 3 days of Amara taking the long way to and from school. 3 days of whispers in the hallway that stopped when she walked by. 3 days of checking over her shoulder, half expecting to see Vanessa there. But Vanessa was serving her detention, and in her absence, something strange happened. People started approaching Amara, not just her friends or classmates, but students she barely knew. A sophomore girl with braces who mumbled a thank you in the bathroom. A tall boy from the basketball team who nodded respectfully when they passed in the hall. A quiet freshman who slipped a note into her locker that simply read, "You made it better." "You're like a celebrity now," Tasha said during lunch on Thursday. The girl who stood up to Vanessa Sutton and lived to tell about it. "I don't want to be a celebrity," Amara replied, picking at her salad. "I just want to finish my project and graduate." "Speaking of your project," Tasha leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Is it true that Dion's helping you with it?" "Because that's what I heard, and you know how I feel about Dion." Amara rolled her eyes. Tasha had been trying to get Dion's attention since freshman year, with little success. He offered to share his experience, that's all. His experience on the bridge? Tasha raised an eyebrow. Or his experience with those artistic hands of his. "Tasha." Amara threw a carrot at her friend, who ducked, laughing. The truth was, Dion had been surprisingly helpful. They'd met at the library yesterday during Amara's shift, and he'd shown her sketches he'd been working on. Illustrations that captured the feeling of being bullied better than words ever could. A small figure surrounded by looming shadows, a bridge that stretched endlessly into fog, a bird with a broken wing still trying to fly. "I stopped drawing for a while after what happened," he'd told her. "Felt like she took that from me too, you know? But then I realized that's exactly what she wanted. To silence me." Amara understood that feeling all too well. After school, she headed to the library for her shift. Mrs. Chen greeted her with a smile and a stack of books to shelve. It was quiet work, the kind that let her mind wander. As she pushed the cart down the aisle, she thought about her project. What had started as a simple research paper had evolved into something bigger. With Dion's art and the stories people were sharing with her, it was becoming a real document of what happened in the shadows of Riverbrook High. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Dion. "Meet at the bridge after your shift? Got something to show you." The bridge. She hadn't been back since that day. The thought made her stomach clench. But curiosity won out. "Okay," she replied. "Done at 6. The rest of her shift crawled by. At 6, she said goodbye to Mrs. Chen and headed toward Willow Creek. The afternoon was fading into evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air was cool against her skin as she followed the path through the trees. She spotted Dion before she reached the bridge. He was sitting on a rock near the water's edge, sketchbook open on his lap, pencil moving rapidly across the page. He didn't look up as she approached, too absorbed in whatever he was creating. "Hey," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. Dion glanced up, a smile spreading across his face. "Hey yourself." He patted the rock beside him. "Come see this." Amara sat down, careful to leave a few inches between them. Dion turned his sketchbook toward her. On the page was a detailed drawing of the bridge, but reimagined. Instead of the weathered stone structure that existed, he'd drawn something brighter, more inviting. Benches lined the walkway. Plants and flowers spilled from containers along the rails. And most striking of all, the words "everyone crosses" were written in flowing script across the entrance. "What do you think?" he asked, watching her face. "It's beautiful," she said honestly, "but I don't understand." "What is it for?" Your project, Dion explained. I was thinking, what if it wasn't just about documenting what's wrong? What if it was also about imagining what could be better? Amara considered this. She'd been so focused on exposing the problem that she hadn't thought much about solutions. Like, reclaiming the bridge? Exactly. Dion nodded, his eyes lighting up. Right now, this place means fear to a lot of kids. But what if we could change that? What if the bridge became a symbol of something else? It was a nice idea, but Amara couldn't help feeling skeptical. Vanessa comes back tomorrow, she pointed out. Nothing's going to change just because we want it to. Dion's smile faded slightly. I know, but maybe it could, if enough people wanted it to. He flipped to another page in his sketchbook. I was thinking about what you said, about your project being about conflict resolution. What if we held an event here? A conversation about bullying right where it happens. An event? On the bridge? Amara frowned. Who would come to that? You'd be surprised, a voice said from behind them. Amara turned so quickly she nearly fell off the rock. Standing on the path was Principal Rivera, his hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket, a thoughtful expression on his face. Mr. Rivera, she stammered. We're just… Relax, Ms. Johnson, he said, holding up a hand. You're not in trouble. I often walk along the creek in the evenings. Helps clear my head. He glanced at Dion's sketchbook. May I? Dion hesitated, then handed it over. Principal Rivera studied the drawing, nodding slowly. This is good work, Mr. Williams, very good indeed. Thank you, sir, Dion mumbled, looking embarrassed. Principal Rivera handed the sketchbook back. I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. An event on the bridge, you say? Amara and Dion exchanged a glance. It was just an idea, Amara explained. For my conflict resolution project. Ah yes, your project, Principal Rivera nodded. Ms. Okoye mentioned it to me. She says it's quite impressive. Ms. Okoye was the school counselor who had been advising Amara on her project. She hadn't realized Ms. Okoye had spoken to the principal about it. The thing is, Principal Rivera continued, we've been looking for ways to address the bullying issue at our school. The traditional approaches, detentions, suspensions, they don't seem to be working. He looked directly at Amara. I'd be very interested in hearing your thoughts on the matter. Both of you. For a moment, Amara was too surprised to speak. The principal of Riverbrook High wanted her opinion. Her, a student who had spent most of her high school years trying not to be noticed. Dion recovered first. We think the bridge could be part of the solution, sir. Instead of being a place where bad things happen, it could be a place where we talk about how to stop those bad things. Principal Rivera nodded thoughtfully. A symbolic reclaiming of space. Interesting approach. He turned to Amara. What do you think, Ms. Johnson? She took a deep breath. I think we need to understand why people bully before we can stop it. And I think the people being bullied need a voice. She paused, thinking of Vanessa's angry words. You with your perfect family and your perfect grades. But I also think everyone has a story, even the bullies, especially the bullies. Principal Rivera studied her for a long moment, then smiled. Well said. He glanced at his watch. It's getting late. You two should head home before it gets dark. But Ms. Johnson, I'd like to see your project when it's ready. Perhaps we could discuss implementing some of your ideas. With that, he nodded goodbye and continued his walk along the creek, disappearing around a bend in the path. Did that just happen? Dion asked once the principal was out of sight. Did Principal Rivera just give us permission to hold an event on the bridge? I think he did, Amara said, still somewhat in shock. But Dion, I don't even know what that would look like. I'm not an event planner. No, but you're a storyteller, he replied. And stories are powerful. They can change things. Amara wasn't so sure about that. But as they packed up Dion's art supplies and walked back toward town, the idea began to take shape in her mind. A bridge event. A place for voices to be heard. Maybe it could work. The next morning, Amara woke with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. She arrived at school early, heading straight to Miss Okoye's office to discuss her expanded project idea. The counselor listened attentively, nodding and making notes. I think it's a wonderful concept, Amara, Ms. Okoye said when she finished. But you should be prepared for resistance. Change isn't easy, especially when it challenges the status quo. I know, Amara replied, but I think it's worth trying. She was on her way to first period when she saw her, Vanessa, back from detention, standing by her locker. Their eyes met across the hallway. For a moment, neither moved. Then Vanessa looked away, slamming her locker shut and stalking off in the opposite direction. That went better than expected, Tasha said, appearing beside Amara. At least she didn't try to kill you. Yet, Amara muttered. The morning passed without incident. By lunch, Amara had started to relax, thinking maybe Vanessa had decided to leave her alone. She was grabbing her tray in the cafeteria line when she felt someone approach from behind. "We need to talk." Vanessa's voice was low, controlled. "Not here. Behind the gym, after school." Before Amara could respond, Vanessa was gone, lost in the crowd of students. "What did she say to you?" Tasha demanded when Amara reached their table. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "She wants to meet after school," Amara said, her appetite suddenly gone. Behind the gym, Tasha's eyes widened. "You're not going, right? That's like walking into a trap." "I don't know," Amara admitted. "Maybe this is a chance to clear the air. Or maybe it's a chance for her to clear your clock," Tasha countered. "Seriously, Amara, don't go. Or if you do, take Dion with you, or me, or both of us." But Amara knew this was something she had to do alone. The bridge incident had started with just the two of them. Whatever happened next should be the same. The rest of the day dragged by in a haze of anxiety. When the final bell rang, Amara found herself walking toward the gym, her heart pounding in her chest. Part of her expected to find Vanessa waiting with her entire crew, ready for revenge. Instead, she found Vanessa sitting alone on the steps, playing with a loose thread on her jacket sleeve. "You came," Vanessa said, looking up. There was surprise in her voice and something else. "Relief, maybe. You asked me to," Amara replied simply. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the distant shouts of the track team practicing on the field. "I saw your video," Vanessa finally said. "The one you took on the bridge," Amara frowned. "What, how? I never showed it to anyone. Rivera did, during my detention. Part of my reflection process," Vanessa made air quotes with her fingers. "He thought I should see myself the way others see me." She looked away. It wasn't pleasant. Amara didn't know what to say. She hadn't intended for that video to be seen by anyone, least of all Vanessa herself. "I'm sorry," she offered. "That wasn't the plan." "What was the plan then?" Vanessa asked, looking back at her. "Why were you recording in the first place?" Amara hesitated, then decided on the truth. "Because I was scared, and I thought if I had evidence, maybe you'd leave me alone." Vanessa considered this, then nodded slowly. "Makes sense." She picked at the thread on her sleeve again. "I heard about your project. The conflict resolution thing. From who?" "Rivera. He thinks I should be part of it." Vanessa gave a short, humorless laugh. "As what? I don't know. The villain of the piece, I guess." Amara remembered what Dion had said about everyone having a story. "Or as someone with a different perspective," she suggested cautiously. "Someone who's been on the other side." Vanessa looked at her sharply. "You think I don't know what it's like to be bullied? You think I haven't been the one feeling scared and small?" The bitterness in her voice surprised Amara. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I don't know much about you at all." "No, you don't," Vanessa agreed. She stood up, brushing off her jeans. "Maybe that's the problem. Nobody does." She started to walk away, then paused. "Your bridge event. When is it happening?" Amara blinked in surprise. "How did you know about that?" Vanessa shrugged. "Word gets around. So when is it?" "We don't have a date yet," Amara admitted. "We're still planning." Vanessa nodded as if making a decision. "Let me know when you do. I might have something to say." With that, she walked away, leaving Amara staring after her, wondering what had just happened. Had Vanessa Sutton, the bridge bully of Riverbrook High, just volunteered to be part of her project? As Amara headed home, taking the path that led over the bridge, she couldn't help feeling that something important had shifted. The bridge didn't seem as threatening now, with the late afternoon sun warming its stones. Or maybe it was she who had changed, becoming someone who didn't need to fear crossing. The bridge event took shape faster than Amara could have imagined. Once Principal Rivera gave his official approval, it seemed like the whole school wanted to be involved. Ms. Okoye helped with the paperwork. The art teacher, Mr. Patterson, volunteered to help Dion create posters and banners. Even Mrs. Chen from the library offered to put together a display of books about bullying, tolerance, and conflict resolution. "It's getting out of hand," Amara told Tasha as they walked home from school one afternoon. "This was supposed to be a small project, and now it's turning into this huge thing." That's because it matters, Tasha replied. You touched a nerve, Amara. People have been wanting to talk about this stuff for a long time, but nobody knew how to start the conversation. Maybe Tasha was right. During the past week, Amara had conducted more interviews for her project than in the entire month before. Students from every grade level wanted to share their experiences, not just about bullying, but about feeling different, excluded, misunderstood. The stories were sometimes painful to hear, but there was also something healing in the telling. Most surprising of all was how many of these stories involved the bridge. What Amara had experienced wasn't unique. The bridge had been a hotspot for bullying for years, its isolated location making it the perfect spot for confrontations away from adult eyes. It's like the bridge has become this symbol, Dion said during one of their planning sessions in the library. A place where bad things happen, but also maybe a place where we can start to make things better. As the event drew closer, Amara found herself walking across the bridge every day after school, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to reclaim it, to turn it from a place of fear into just another part of her walk home. Sometimes Dion joined her. Sometimes Tasha. And sometimes she crossed alone, her footsteps echoing on the stone, her mind busy with plans for the event. But there was one person she hadn't seen again on the bridge, Vanessa. Since their conversation behind the gym, Vanessa had kept her distance. Amara would catch her watching sometimes in the cafeteria or the hallway, but whenever their eyes met, Vanessa would look away. It was as if she was avoiding Amara, which was fine by Amara, except for one thing. She still didn't know if Vanessa was planning to participate in the bridge event. Does it matter? Tasha asked when Amara mentioned it. After everything she's done, why would you want her there anyway? Because it's not really about healing if we exclude the person who caused the hurt, Amara explained. At least that's what Ms. Okoye says. Tasha rolled her eyes. Ms. Okoye didn't have to take the long way home for a year because of Vanessa Sutton. But the counselor's words had stuck with Amara. True conflict resolution meant finding a way forward that included everyone, even the difficult ones, especially the difficult ones. 2 days before the event, Amara made a decision. After her library shift, instead of heading straight home, she went to the address she'd found in the school directory. It was a small house on the north side of town, the paint peeling, the yard overgrown. A far cry from the wealthy neighborhood Amara had always assumed Vanessa lived in. She stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, wondering if this was a terrible idea. What if Vanessa's father answered the door? What if he was drunk like the rumors said? What if Vanessa herself slammed the door in her face? Before she could talk herself out of it, Amara walked up to the porch and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. The door cracked open, and Vanessa's face appeared in the gap. Her eyes widened when she saw Amara. What are you doing here? She demanded. I came to talk to you, Amara said, trying to keep her voice steady. About the bridge event. Vanessa glanced over her shoulder, then stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. Not here, she said in a low voice. Let's walk. They headed down the street in silence, Vanessa leading the way. Amara noticed she was wearing an old t-shirt with a hole in the sleeve, very different from the trendy clothes she wore at school. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled like usual, but pulled back in a messy ponytail. So, Vanessa finally said, breaking the silence. The famous bridge event. Saturday at noon, right? You know about it? The whole town knows about it. Your posters are everywhere. Vanessa glanced at her. Nice work, by the way. Dayon's got talent. Amara was surprised by the compliment. He does. He's been a big help. They reached a small playground, empty at this hour. Vanessa sat on one of the swings, pushing herself back and forth with the toe of her shoe. After a moment's hesitation, Amara took the swing beside her. I was serious, you know, Vanessa said, looking at the ground. When I said I might have something to say at your event. What kind of something? Vanessa shrugged. I've been thinking a lot. About the bridge. About why I did what I did there. She looked up, meeting Amara's eyes. Would you believe me if I said I'm sorry? The question caught Amara off guard. I don't know. Fair enough, Vanessa nodded. I haven't given you much reason to trust me. She pushed the swing a little higher. My dad says apologies are worthless, that you can't undo what's done. I don't think that's true, Amara said carefully. Apologies might not change the past, but they can change the future. Vanessa considered this. Maybe. She dragged her feet, stopping the swing. The thing is, I don't even know where to start. There's been so many people. Start with one, Amara suggested. That's all anyone can do. Vanessa looked at her for a long moment. Is that why you're here? To be my first apology? No, Amara shook her head. I'm here because the event is about healing. And that includes you too. Something shifted in Vanessa's expression then. A softening around the eyes, a slight tremble of her lips. You really believe that, don't you? That I can change? I believe we all can, Amara replied. If we want to badly enough. They sat in silence for a while, the chains of the swings creaking softly. In the distance, a dog barked. A car drove past. Normal sounds of a normal evening, yet something extraordinary was happening between them. My mom left when I was 14, Vanessa said suddenly. Just packed a bag and walked out. Didn't even say goodbye. Amara stayed quiet, sensing that Vanessa needed to talk more than she needed a response. Dad started drinking after that. Lost his job at the factory. We had to sell our house. Move to that place you saw. Vanessa's voice was flat, emotionless, as if she was reciting facts from a textbook. I used to be different before all that. Used to care about school, about friends, about, I don't know, being good, I guess. What changed? Amara asked softly. Vanessa gave a short, humorless laugh. Everything. Me. I got angry. Started taking it out on people. It felt good, you know? Like for once I was the one with the power, not the one getting hurt. She glanced at Amara. That's messed up, right? It's human, Amara said. Not good, but human. Vanessa nodded as if this made sense to her. The bridge was perfect. Isolated, but everyone had to cross it eventually. I could be whoever I wanted there, do whatever I wanted. She looked away. I didn't think about how I was becoming exactly what I hated. Someone who makes others feel small and scared. The honesty of Vanessa's words hung in the air between them. Amara tried to reconcile this vulnerable girl on the swing with the intimidating figure who had terrorized the bridge for so long. They were the same person, she realized. Just different sides, different masks. Will you come to the event? Amara asked. Not just to apologize, but to be part of making things better? Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if I can face everyone, she finally said. All those people I hurt. What if they don't want me there? That's the risk you take, Amara replied. But how will anything change if you don't try? The question seemed to hit home. Vanessa stood up from the swing, brushing off her jeans. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I can promise right now. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. As they walked back toward Vanessa's house, a strange new feeling settled between them. Not friendship exactly, but understanding. Two girls from different worlds who had collided on a bridge and somehow found a way to keep standing. Saturday arrived clear and bright, the kind of autumn day that felt like a gift. Amara woke early, too nervous to sleep. By the time she reached the bridge at 11, preparations were already underway. Dion and Mr. Patterson were hanging banners. Ms. Okoye was setting up chairs in a semicircle. Principal Rivera was talking to a reporter from the local newspaper. There she is, Tasha called, rushing over to hug Amara. The woman of the hour. Can you believe how many people are here already? It was true. Students, teachers, parents, even townspeople with no direct connection to the school were gathering on and around the bridge. Some carried handmade signs with messages like, "No more bullying" and "Everyone crosses together." I can't believe this is really happening, Amara said, her voice thick with emotion. It started with just me being scared on a bridge. And now look, Tasha gestured around them. You changed things, Amara. You actually changed things. As noon approached, Amara scanned the growing crowd looking for one particular face. But Vanessa wasn't there. Despite their talk, despite the understanding they'd reached, she hadn't come. Disappointment settled in Amara's chest. Heavy and cold. It's time, Principal Rivera said, gesturing for her to take her place at the center of the bridge. Amara walked forward, her legs feeling suddenly weak. So many eyes watching her, so many people waiting to hear what she had to say. She had prepared a speech, practiced it a dozen times in front of her bedroom mirror, but now, looking out at the crowd, the words seemed inadequate. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice barely audible over the gentle rushing of Willow Creek below. She cleared her throat and tried again, louder this time. Thank you for being here today. on this bridge that has meant so many different things to so many of us. As she spoke, telling the story of her project, of the stories she'd collected, of the journey that had led to this moment, Amara felt a strange sense of rightness. This was where she was meant to be. This was what she was meant to do. And then, as she was explaining the next part of the program, Dion's presentation of the artwork inspired by bridge stories, she saw a figure at the edge of the crowd. Vanessa, wearing a clean blue shirt, her hair neatly brushed, standing alone at the entrance to the bridge. Their eyes met across the distance. Amara gave a small nod of encouragement, and slowly, hesitantly, Vanessa began to walk onto the bridge, crossing the threshold that separated her from the community she had hurt and been hurt by. It wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't even the middle, but it was a beginning, the start of a new chapter for the bridge, for Riverbrook High, and for two girls who had found an unexpected path to healing. A hush fell over the crowd as Vanessa made her way to the center of the bridge. People stepped aside, some with surprise, others with wariness in their eyes. No one had expected the bridge's notorious bully to show up at an event dedicated to healing the very wounds she had created. Amara watched Vanessa's approach, noting the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands. It took courage to walk into a space where you knew you weren't welcome, maybe more courage than it had taken for Amara to stand up to her that day on the bridge. "Thank you for coming," Amara said quietly when Vanessa reached her side. It wasn't part of her planned speech, but it felt right to acknowledge the significance of her presence. Vanessa nodded, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Half the town is here," she murmured. "I didn't think it would be this big." "Neither did I," Amara admitted. She turned back to the audience who were watching this unexpected interaction with curious eyes. "As I was saying, Dion Williams has created some amazing artwork based on the stories we've collected." Dion stepped forward, unrolling a large canvas that had been covered until now. On it was a painting of the bridge, but transformed into a colorful, vibrant place filled with students of all backgrounds. What made the image powerful wasn't just its beauty, but the way Dion had incorporated real stories into the scene, small vignettes showing moments of both cruelty and kindness that had taken place on the bridge over the years. "This is our bridge," Dion explained, his voice stronger than Amara had ever heard it. "Not just a place we cross, but a place that has shaped us, for better or worse." As he spoke about his artwork and the stories behind it, Amara noticed something changing in the audience. People were nodding, whispering to each other, pointing at different parts of the painting. They recognized themselves in these stories, not just the victims of bullying, but the bystanders, the ones who had looked away, the ones who had wanted to help but didn't know how. After Dion's presentation, Ms. Okoye led a short discussion about the school's new anti-bullying initiatives. Principal Rivera talked about creating safer spaces for all students, but the real power of the event came next when the microphone was opened up to anyone who wanted to share their experience. The first person to step forward was a quiet sophomore named Tyler, who told the story of how he'd been shoved against the bridge railing last year, his backpack thrown into the creek below. "I was too embarrassed to tell anyone," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I just told my mom I lost my books. But the worst part wasn't losing my stuff, it was feeling like I couldn't cross the bridge without being scared every day after that." One by one, others came forward. A girl who had been mocked for her accent, a boy who had been tripped and laughed at, a girl with a limp who had been blocked from crossing until she cried. Some stories were recent, others from years ago, passed down like cautionary tales from older siblings to younger ones. Beside Amara, Vanessa grew more and more still with each story. Her face had gone pale, her lips pressed into a tight line. She was hearing, perhaps for the first time, the full impact of what had happened on this bridge. Not just what she had done, but what others before her had done too. When the last scheduled speaker finished, there was a moment of silence. Amara looked at Vanessa questioningly. This was her chance if she wanted to take it. But Vanessa shook her head slightly, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. Amara understood. It was one thing to talk about making amends, another thing entirely to do it in front of the whole town. She turned to thank everyone for coming, to move on to the closing remarks, but then, just as she opened her mouth to speak, Vanessa stepped forward. "Wait," she said, her voice so quiet that only Amara could hear at first. Then louder, "Wait, I have something to say." Amara hesitated, then handed her the microphone. The crowd, which had started to shift and murmur in anticipation of the event's end, grew still again. Vanessa looked down at the microphone in her hands, then out at the sea of faces. Many were familiar, classmates, teachers, kids she'd known since elementary school. Some were strangers. All were watching her now, waiting. "My name is Vanessa Sutton," she began, her voice surprisingly steady. "And I'm the reason we're all here today. Not in a good way.
In a I'm the person who made this bridge a place to be afraid of kind of way." A murmur ran through the crowd.
Amara saw some people exchange surprised glances. Others nod as if they'd known all along. "I'm not good at apologies," Vanessa continued. "But I'm going to try because that's what this event is about, right? Healing." She took a deep breath. "So here it is, I'm sorry. To everyone who crossed this bridge and met me at my worst. To everyone who took the long way home because of me. To everyone who felt small or scared or hurt because of something I did or said." She paused, swallowing hard. "I could tell you why I did it. I could talk about my mom leaving or my dad losing his job or how awful I felt inside. But that wouldn't make it okay. Nothing makes it okay to hurt other people just because you're hurting." The bridge was completely silent now. Even the creek below seemed to have quieted its rushing. "The truth is," Vanessa's voice cracked slightly, "I never thought about how it felt to be on the other side. I never let myself think about it because then I'd have to admit what I was doing. But now I've heard your stories and I can't not think about it anymore." She looked directly at Tyler, the boy who had lost his backpack in the creek. "I'm the one who did that to you. And I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry." Tyler's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed. He gave a small, tight nod of acknowledgement. "I know sorry isn't enough," Vanessa continued. "Words are easy, but I'm here to say that I want to be part of making things better, not worse. I want this bridge to be safe for everyone, and I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen." She handed the microphone back to Amara, her hand visibly shaking now. The crowd remained silent, processing what they'd just witnessed. Was it really possible? Had Riverbrook High's notorious bully just apologized in front of the entire town? Amara felt the weight of the moment. What happened next would determine whether this event was just a nice idea or the beginning of real change. "Thank you, Vanessa," she said into the microphone. "It takes courage to admit when you've been wrong." She turned to address the crowd. "This bridge has been a place of hurt for too long, but today we start to change that story, not by forgetting what happened here, but by choosing to write a different ending." She nodded to Dion, who unveiled a second canvas. This one showed the bridge as it could be, with new benches, planters full of flowers, and a small plaque that read, "Everyone crosses, a bridge to understanding. Principal Rivera and the town council have approved our proposal to renovate this bridge," Amara explained. "Not just physically, but in what it means to our community. We're going to turn it into a place where people can sit and talk, share stories, get to know each other better. A place of connection, not division." She smiled at the crowd. "And we need volunteers to help make it happen. People to paint, to plant flowers, to build benches. People who believe, like we do, that change is possible." To Amara's surprise, the first hand to go up belonged to Tyler, the boy who had lost his backpack. The second was Vanessa's. After that, hands shot up all across the bridge. Students, teachers, parents, community members. Even Mr. Chen from the hardware store, who had no children in the school but had heard about the event and wanted to donate supplies. As the event wound down, people lingered on the bridge, talking in small groups, signing up for volunteer shifts, examining Dion's artwork more closely. The atmosphere had changed from the tense anticipation at the beginning to something lighter, more hopeful. Amara found herself standing at the edge of the bridge, looking out over Willow Creek when Vanessa approached her. "Did you plan this all along?" Vanessa asked. "Getting me to apologize in front of everyone?" Amara shook her head. "I hoped you would come. I never expected you to do what you did." "It felt right," Vanessa said quietly. "Scary, but right." She glanced over at Tyler, who was talking to Dion nearby. "Do you think he'll ever forgive me?" "I don't know," Amara answered honestly. "Forgiveness takes time, but you made a start today." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the crowd begin to disperse, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the bridge. "So what happens now?" Vanessa finally asked. "Now we rebuild," Amara replied. "The bridge and everything else." 6 months later, on a warm spring day, Amara stood on the newly renovated bridge, admiring the transformation. Fresh paint covered the old stone walls. Wooden benches lined both sides, each one carved with words like courage, respect, understanding. Planters overflowed with bright flowers, tended by a rotating group of student volunteers. And at the entrance, a small brass plaque told the story of how a place of fear had become a place of healing. But the physical changes weren't what made Amara proudest. It was what happened on the bridge now. Students who once hurried across with their heads down now stopped to talk, to sit, to simply be. The younger kids no longer heard warnings about the bridge bully from their older siblings. Instead, they heard the story of how students had come together to make a change. And Vanessa? She had become one of the most dedicated volunteers, showing up every week to weed the planters or repaint the benches when they got scratched. She and Amara weren't exactly friends, but they had developed a respect for each other, a recognition of the journey they had taken together. "Penny for your thoughts?" Dion asked, joining Amara at the center of the bridge. His latest artwork, a mural depicting the bridge's transformation, had just been installed in the school's main hallway. "Just thinking about how different things are now," she replied. "Not just the bridge, but everything," Dion nodded. "Your project changed more than you planned, didn't it?" "It did," Amara agreed. "It was supposed to be about conflict resolution, but it turned into something bigger, about who we want to be as a community, how we treat each other, how we heal." In the distance, she could see Vanessa leading a group of middle school students onto the bridge, gesturing as she talked. Not threatening or intimidating, but teaching, sharing the bridge's story with the next generation. "You know what's funny?" Amara said to Dion. "That day when Vanessa stopped me on the bridge, I was terrified. I thought it was the worst thing that could happen to me. And now?" Amara smiled. "Now I think it might have been the best. Not because it was easy or because I enjoyed it, but because it forced me to find a voice I didn't know I had, to stop taking the long way around hard things." As they walked off the bridge together, Amara glanced back one last time. The afternoon sun caught the brass plaque, making the words shine. "Everyone crosses, a bridge to understanding." Some lessons, she had learned, could only be taught in the places that scared you most. And some bridges once crossed changed you forever.